Say go. Big house here. While visiting the Indian reservation at Akwesasne, or otherwise known as St. Regis Indian Reservation, on the Quebec-U.S. border, I went to visit my favorite aunt. Now, she's in her mid-90s now, but I find out as a child she was taken from the reservation and put into a Canada residential school. I didn't really know what that meant as a child because it was never spoken of when I was a child on the reservation. No matter what, nobody ever spoke about these schools. But she was taken by force and put in a school far away from her home so that escape was impossible. Now they stripped, starting in 1844, was the idea to kill the Indian in the child, to make them a good Canadian Christian citizen. By 1890, they had developed these schools, like you're looking at now, all the way across Canada. So what they would do is forcibly take the children off the reservation, put them in one of these schools, and there were hundreds, possibly 1,000 in each school. They would cut their hair very short and dress them in nondescript clothing. The children were placed in these schools from the age of 7 to 15, and sometimes younger than that. But anyway, they were placed in the schools and forced not to speak their language or talk about their Indian heritage. If they did speak any Indian at all, they were severely beaten until they were unconscious or raped, even at the age of 7. And the sad part was that out of the 150,000 plus children that were taken from the reservation, 30 to 60% of the children perished while in the care of these schools. They would make them kneel on their beds, the end of their beds, and say the Lord's Prayer and talk only in English. If they did not or they would not conform, then they were taken and beaten or raped until they would promise to conform. These schools were operated and controlled by the Jesuit priests and nuns, and these children, most of them, had to just forget the punishments and the abuses that they went through in these schools. And they were taught, originally, to be regular citizens with good English, of course, English speaking, and most of them didn't even speak the English language as a child. So they were forced to be taught English. Now, understand that I am not trying to make a bitter documentary. I'm just trying to report the truth, but take it from me, this event and these schools are very well documented on Google. So my intent here is just to turn you on to the fact to look these up and look up the startling pictures and interviews from survivors. Go to Google under Canadian Residential Indian Schools.
I got frightened when I was a little girl when the principal used to beat up the other children, like boys. The boys got the most beating. They used to call it bench party, and it was usually done after supper, and that's where I got frightened, because I saw blood.
I remember when we had to shower. You only have to show me how to shower and clean and wash myself, how to wash my private and private parts of your body. You only have to show a kid once or twice at the most, but not every day. And have the supervisor come in there and basically take advantage of you.
I just remember arriving there and donning new clothes and, of course, getting a haircut and sitting in a classroom and being with other girls and witnessing my brother get punched by the supervisor.
My name is Alice Little Deer. I'm 78 years old. I spent about 8 years in residential school.
My name is Raymond Mason. I'm 62 years old, and I attended residential school for 12 years.
I'm Madeline Dion Stout. I'm 62 years old. I'm from the Kihiwan First Nation in Alberta. I attended Blue Quills Residential School for 36 consecutive months. That would be 3 years.
In order to educate the children properly, we must separate them from their families. Some people may say that this is hard, but if we want to civilize them, we must do that.
I remember them taking me away from my mother and my stepfather. And I can hear them telling my mom that that was the best thing for me, you know, and that not to worry, I would be looked after.
Our parents didn't want to worry us unduly and tell us and warn us that we are going to be separated for a long, long time with barely a visit.
I see him come around, Indian agent, in a boat with the principal, then collect some children from the reserve. Then he would come back again, come and take some more.
So the next day, I woke up with hundreds of total strangers, my size, my age. And not knowing, you know, what are they doing with all of us here? Why are there's so many of us here, you know? And that's where a lot of my whole life really started to change.
Our parents didn't want to worry us unduly and tell us and warn us that we are going to be separated for a long, long time.
I see him come around, Indian agent, in a boat.
Where a lot of my whole life really started to change, because I got strapped, I got beaten up for speaking my own native tongue. I even had my tongue pulled out and pinched, you know.
My strongest memory there is when the little girl died beside me. She must have been about 6. I was scared why the parents were not there. That's what I was scared about. And I knew they wouldn't feel comfortable for not being there when their daughter is dying.
And do you know why they weren't there?
They were never notified.
Were you angry at your parents that they made you go to school?
Sometimes I would think about them. I get mad for all giving me here, sending me over there where all the bad treatment is. And
Understand, the boys were put in one side of the school and the girls in the other, and they were never allowed to communicate with each other. And all the time they were in the school, and some children were in there for 12 years and better.
Tell me how you felt when you saw your children go to that school.
well, I felt sad. My first 2 boys went. And then a couple of years after, the next 2 boys went. And so on. As they got older, yeah. I told them to be strong. I had always told them to be strong. To be able to take it like the other children.
So you sent 11 kids to residential school? How many of them do you think were strong through that?
None of them. None of them.
What about your children? How do you think it affected them being in residential
Well,
school?
like I said, a little bit crazier. Then they went than before they went to school. Their mind was a little bit more intact, staying at home with us. They knew how to hunt ducks, and they knew how to fish, and they knew how to snare rabbits and pick blueberries. Today you don't see that.
And you think that's the school?
Yeah. Everything destroyed.
Didn't have any parents as role models. So we were vulnerable children. And a lot of us were abused ourselves as young children. And I also realized at that point that one of the people who abused me in my family had been a residential school survivor, a family member. And I understood why now, why I was abused.
The great aim of our legislation has been to do away with the tribal system and to assimilate the Indian people in all respects. Sir John A. Macdonald, May 2nd, 1887.
That they put in him, I mean, he managed to bring that with him, and it went into our family, you know. And I learned terror and fear and all that as well as a child. I put fear in my sons too. That's all I knew. You know, when they were doing something that was right, I would put fear in them, you know.
Our objective is to continue until there is not a single Indian in Canada that has not been absorbed into the body politic, and there is no Indian question and no Indian department.